Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Joe Bonavolanta, the Special Agent in charge of the FBI Boston Division, and I'm pleased to be joined by Massachusetts State Police Colonel Chris Mason, Provincetown Police Chief Jim Golden, Cape and Islands District Attorney Michael O'Keefe, and First Assistant United States Attorney Josh Levy. We are standing here today to announce that after nearly a half-century of investigative efforts, we have identified the oldest unidentified homicide victim in Massachusetts, known as the Lady of the Dunes. She is Ruth Marie Terry from Tennessee, who was just 37 years old at the time of her death. The FBI identified Ruth using investigative genealogy. This is a unique method that can generate new leads for unsolved homicides, as well as help identify unknown victims. This is, without a doubt, a major break in the investigation that will, hopefully, bring all of us closer to identifying the killer. Earlier this morning, FBI special agents and victim specialists, along with troopers from the Massachusetts State Police, delivered the news to the victim's family, and we would like to ask all of you to respect their privacy at this time. On July 26, 1974, Ruth was found deceased in the dunes about a mile east of Race Point Ranger Station inside the Cape Cod National Seashore in Provincetown, Massachusetts. At the time, the cause of death was determined to be a blow to the head and is estimated to have occurred several weeks prior. The victim's hands were missing, presumably removed by her killer so she could not be identified through fingerprints, and her head was nearly severed from her body. It was a brutal death, and for the last 48 years, investigators with the Massachusetts State Police and Provincetown Police Department have worked tirelessly to identify her through various means, including neighborhood canvasses, reviews of thousands of missing persons cases, clay model facial reconstruction, and age regression drawings. Since this crime was committed, many investigative and scientific techniques have either improved or been created through new advances in technology. One of these methods is investigative genealogy, which combines the use of DNA analysis with traditional genealogy research and historical records to generate investigative leads for unsolved violent crimes. Just last week, the FBI received positive confirmation of Ruth's identity through the genealogical examination of this infamous cold case. However, to be clear, we would like to emphasize that we are not getting access to any DNA results stored within private databases, and we have no interest in obtaining actual DNA results from these companies. As investigators, cases like this one haunt us, and the agencies represented here today are constantly reevaluating and coming up with new investigative strategies to try and advance them. We also realize that while we have identified Ruth as the victim of this horrific murder, it does not ease the pain for her family. Nothing can, but hopefully it answers some questions while we continue to look for her killer. So what exactly do we know about Ruth Marie Terry? At this point in time, we can tell you she was born in Tennessee in 1936. Ruth was a daughter, sister, aunt, wife, and mother. Investigators have also determined that in addition to Tennessee, she had ties to California, Massachusetts, and Michigan. Now that we have reached this pivotal point, investigators and analysts will turn their attention to conducting logical investigative steps that include learning more about her, as well as working to identify who is responsible for her murder. We are asking the public to review Ruth's Seeking Information poster, and if anyone has any information concerning this case that could help the investigative team, we're asking you to contact either the Massachusetts State Police or the FBI. I think the most important message that we can deliver today is to every victim of violent crime and that is the FBI and our entire law enforcement community in Massachusetts will never give up, and we will use whatever technological advancement we can to seek justice for you and your family. Today's announcement should also serve as a warning to every murderer, rapist, and violent offender out there. The FBI and our law enforcement partners will not rest. It may take years or even decades in some cases, but we are determined and we will be dogged in our search for justice for victims and their families. On behalf of the men and women of FBI Boston, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Colonel Mason, Chief Golden, District Attorney O'Keefe, and their teams for their hard work and persistence and for bringing us on board to assist. I also want to thank FBI Boston's agents and analysts in our Lakeville office who worked very hard to identify Ruth, and First Assistant United States Attorney Josh Levy and his office, who stand at the ready to assist us. Now, I will turn it over to Massachusetts State Police Colonel Chris Mason. Colonel.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking our partners at the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the collaboration and work on this case, and recognize the value of their extraordinary capabilities in investigative genealogy. Thank you to both the Boston Field Office and the Lakeville RA in particular, and to the leadership of Special Agent in Charge Joe Bonavolanta. Today, over 48 years after her murder and discovery, we can finally say her name, Ruth Marie Terry. We know Ruth had family and friends who loved her, and we are aware that this development has not been an easy one for them, so we keep them in our thoughts today during this difficult time. Certainly, during the years that they were in contact with her, they never envisioned the outcome for the child, the teenage girl, the young woman they knew, loved, and cared about. We hope today's announcement helps shed some light on the many questions they have had these many years and marks another step towards answering more of them. For many police investigators at the end of their careers, there is often an unresolved case that haunts them, that intrudes upon the days, years, and decades of the rest of their lives. This case has been that for generations of Provincetown police officers and Massachusetts state troopers. To the many federal, state, and local partners, investigators, forensic and evidence technicians, and countless others who have played a role in this investigation to date, we are appreciative and grateful for your tireless work. To the people of Provincetown, Cape Cod, and the Commonwealth, who never forgot her, thank you. Today's identification of the Lady of the Dunes is not the end of the case, or even the beginning of the end, but this achievement does mark an important milestone towards identifying Ruth's killer. It represents a critical discovery that makes possible the rest of the work that lies ahead. Now, almost half a century since her own voice was silenced in the most horrible of ways, we focus our work entirely on determining what Ruth Marie Terry did in life, on what led her to the easternmost point of our state, to the dunes of Provincetown, and to who did this to her. To her loved ones and friends, today we express our heartfelt condolences and pledge to continue walking the hard road towards justice for Ruth. The Massachusetts State Police, the Provincetown Police, the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office, and the FBI will not rest easy until we complete the unfinished work still ahead. We must now diligently and methodically learn everything we can about Ms. Terry's life, what she did, where she went, who she associated with, all in hope that those details and that timeline will lead us to her killer. That work has already begun. We ask that the public continue to partner with us and provide us with whatever information they may have that could assist investigators in the resolution of this case. If you know anything about the victim or the murder, please contact either the FBI or the Massachusetts State Police at the number and email addresses provided on the poster you see and posted on our social media sites. So now, almost half a century of that terrible discovery in the Cape Cod dunes, for this victim, for all who knew, loved, and missed her, for the sake of justice, we will redouble and reaffirm our mission to speak for Ruth Marie Terry. Thank you. I'd like to now turn it over to Josh Levy, the First Assistant United States Attorney.
Thank you, Colonel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Levy. I'm the First Assistant United States Attorney in the District of Massachusetts. United States Attorney Rachel Rollins would be here today. She's very interested in this matter, but she's following it from Washington, D.C., where she's at the United States Attorney's Conference. Ruth Marie Terry was murdered nearly 50 years ago, and the heartless coward or cowards that killed her left her body behind in the Cape Cod National Seashore. The development that we're announcing today is the product of tireless and exceptional police work and work by law enforcement. It happens every day behind the scenes. Partnerships between the federal government, federal law enforcement, the state police, and local law enforcement. And it protects all of us. And I've seen it time and time again in just 10 months that Rachel Rollins been the U.S. Attorney and I've been her first assistant. Exceptional cooperation, which wasn't always the case in the Boston law enforcement community. We've seen it in the Children's Hospital bomb threat cases, Northeastern University bomb threats, the murder of Jassy Carrera by Louis D. Coleman, and the incredible federal, state, local partnership that happened there. It doesn't make great headlines, but this is the kind of police work that's happening every day in our Commonwealth. And I commend the leadership of Joe Bonavolente. I commend the state police, the Provincetown police, and so many great partnerships that exist with local departments across the Commonwealth. Last week at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we had the Law Enforcement Awards Rachel Rollins hosted, and virtually every case involved not just law enforcement from Federal Bureau of Investigation or HSI or other law enforcement agencies, but local and state law enforcement agents, police officers on the street. That's how we solve these really tough cases. The highest calling in this job is to give voice to the voiceless and to serve victims and their families. And it may take months, it may take years. This case, it's taken over 4 decades, but no one's stopping. And this is a very important development, but we're on to the next round. As Joe and Colonel Mason went over, we need help from the public. We welcome more information. We're determined to solve this crime. And now I'll turn it over to Cape and Islands District Attorney Michael O'Keefe, another partner in this effort.
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to extend my great appreciation to the entire FBI team, but particularly to Kate Kelly and Melissa Harrisot, who did remarkable work on this identification. If Ruth Marie hadn't met her assailant in 1974, she could be 86 years old today. If the person responsible for the crime was in his or her 20s or 30s, he would be in his late 60s or 70s. If he was a little older, he may well be dead, but we will assume he is not, and we will pursue every lead and every clue to bring this person to justice. Now, I'll make just one other point. The technique used by our federal partners, the FBI, to make this identification is essentially the same technique used by the California authorities to identify the Grim Sleeper, a serial murderer in 2010, and the Golden State Killer, who committed rapes, murders, and burglaries over a 20-year period up and down the state of California. I have prepared a packet which details a real-world example of this from right here in Massachusetts involving a serial rapist. I invite you to take one as you leave, and I'll be happy to speak with you at a later time on the contents of that. The Massachusetts District Attorneys Association continues to urge the advancement of this technique so other IDs like Ruth's can be made and other perpetrators caught and brought to justice. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing this important information with your listeners and readers. It will be of help. First, I'd invite the Provincetown Police Chief to say a few words, John.
Good morning, everybody. We are profoundly grateful for our partners to finally bring some measure of closure to the family by identifying the victim of this gruesome crime. Many of us who are working the case today were in grade school when this horrific crime happened, but there have been generations of investigators, both at the state and local level, that we need to appreciate for their continued support and dogged efforts with regard to this investigation. Today is about the victim, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Can you tell us why, you said she had ties, she's from Tennessee, but she had ties to Michigan and California, and also Massachusetts. Can you elaborate a little bit on what brought her here, why she was on Cape Cod in 1974?
You can imagine up to now, it's been about identifying the victim and making the family notifications. Regarding any ties, what may have brought Ruth Marie here, any acquaintances she may have had, that will now be determined as the investigation ramps up and any leads that may come in, which is why it's so important for the public or anybody that may have any information to please call these lines or send a message via the emails provided on the poster.
Was she living here at the time, visiting, passing through? Do you know that yet?
Once again, it's very premature, and we're hesitant to say anything related to familiar relationships because this is still so new and the notifications have just been made.
Talk a little bit about forensic genealogy.
Okay, please, one at a time.
Has she been a missing person? Family, report her disappearance to authorities?
The family was, a particular member of the family had undertaken efforts many, many years ago to find her after that family member concluded that in 1974 she was missing. So there were efforts made by that family member, and there was obviously the knowledge that she had gone missing in 1974.
Can we talk a little bit about forensic genealogy? What does that mean? How does that work? What happened here?
Sure. So, as I said before, forensic genealogy is one of many tools that we have that we will use when and where appropriate in investigations. In this case, a cold case homicide in an attempt to identify a victim, and it's a methodology where we're using DNA analysis in conjunction with genealogical research as well as other historical family records and research and things related along those lines. That's in a nutshell what investigative genealogy is, and as you can see, it's been used in other cases as well, and in this case to try to identify the victims. In other cases, it's been used to identify the actual subject of an unsolved homicide, things along those lines.
Up till now, the person who did this probably thought they got away with murder. Now that you've identified her, what's your message to her killer?
Well, I think I would speak collectively for all of us in terms of what I said before, which is, if the killer is still out there and watching this, it's simply that it doesn't matter how much time goes by, in this case, well over 4 decades, we're going to continue to vet this out as much as we can in an aggressive manner. And if a lead winds up coming in and we can put it together investigatively where we can identify a killer, they'll be seeing us.
People have speculated wildly about this case for years, connecting it to everything from local and national serial killers to Whitey Bulger. People have said that she was on the set of Jaws. What do we know about what happened here? Do we know anything new about what happened?
Well, you just said the key phrase, which is what do we know? And before we can get to that point in an investigation, we need to know primarily who is the victim. Now we know. So now, as the Colonel alluded to earlier, now we move forward aggressively, hopefully with the help of the public.
It's with the dismemberment aspect of this and removing the hands. A lot of people think that signals something with organized crime. And Mr. Bulger obviously was in Provincetown at that time. Is he or someone around him still in play, possibly responsible for
Once again, we can only go by what we know, and any of that would just be speculation.
Last question.
Yeah, can you give us a little bit more detail on whatever you can tell us about her? You said she was a wife, a mother. I mean, anything you know about her, what she did, or?
Well, once again, we need to be very sensitive to the fact that family notifications were literally made just a couple of hours ago. And so for that reason, we'll see however many leads come in, and we'll go from there. But at this time, what we've said thus far is where we want to leave it until more information comes in.
Is there anything you're obviously you're trying to figure out what she was doing here, who she was hanging with. Is there any information you might want to put out that might help people? Like, was she spotted in the P-Town area just prior to this, or anywhere else that might help people jog their memory?
So we would if at this time we knew that, but that's why we're here today, is to try to solicit information from the public to put that out. And if things like that come out where we might need additional information, we will do that.
Thanks, guys.
Joe, is there a database? You said you didn't use Ancestry or any of that commercial DNA site that people, do their own family history on. Is there like another database or something that you're able to get this done from?
Once again, when it comes to talking about investigative genealogy, like I did before, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that we are not getting access to any DNA results stored within private databases, and we have no interest in obtaining actual DNA results from these companies. It's simply a methodology that is used, to use the DNA analysis, but using that in conjunction with historical records and genealogical research.